All right, so I have 6 o'clock. I guess that's going to be 1 o'clock your time. Hopefully everybody is back from lunch. I'm back from breakfast. And I just want to say thank you for coming to this session today. We're going to talk about achieving a consistent user experience, and we're going to focus on branding and navigation in modern SharePoint sites to do that. I'll get to some housekeeping here. I want to say thank you very much to the SharePoint Saturday Warsaw team. They graciously accepted me as a speaker without knowing me. And I was going to be there in person today. Obviously, I can't do that. So I know that they've arranged for a session or the all-day event in person on September 12th. Hopefully, we'll be able to do that. I have a wedding to go to that day, so I will not be able to be there. We also want to thank our sponsors. Without them, SharePoint Saturday would not be possible. So both the online event and the one coming up in person. And so a little bit about me. Let me change to full screen. There we go. So a little bit about me is that my name is Theresa Lubelski, and I was born in the United States, first generation, my brother and I, but we are actually of Polish descent. I mean, with a name like Lubelski, I think I'd have to be. So my mom and dad were both born in Germany in 1947, so not long after the war. Come from a Polish and Russian descent, actually. And having grown up in the United States, I didn't really know much about Polish tradition or anything except for pierogi and kielbasa. We used to make pierogi every Christmas Eve. And so it's just, that's my Polish. When I think Polish, that's what I think of. So I am an aunt. I have one nephew. He is my brother's son. He is 16 and lots of fun. I went to the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. So I actually grew up in Louisiana. My dad was in the United States Air Force. So we moved there when I was 8, and that was pretty much where I grew up. After college, I moved to Texas, and that is where I live now. And then I also have a dog, so hopefully she'll be quiet. She is nearby, so if she does bark, I apologize. Are there any questions before we get started? So the first thing I always like to do is say that one of the main things I want you to learn today is how to get free help. I don't know if you're on Twitter, hopefully you are, but if you have a question that you need help with, you can always go on Twitter and use the hashtag #SPHelp, and you'll get help from people all over the world. I frequently get help from some of the people that I've met through SharePoint Saturdays that are in France, Belgium, Norway, England, so, and of course, the United States as well. And like I said, we're gonna talk about achieving a consistent user experience. First, we'll go through some navigation tips and best practices. The thing I'm most excited about is opening links in new tabs, because that is something that requires some JSON, some column formatting, and that is new for me. I literally got it yesterday, so I added it to the presentation here. And then branding, we'll talk about doing some customization, making the site kind of look pretty, look the same. That way we have that consistent user experience. All right, so everyone can see my screen and hear me fine?
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you. And are we recording? Or do I need to do that?
We are doing, so
okay,
all good. Thank you.
All right. So this used to be our SharePoint homepage. Now it is our SharePoint start page. And when you click on SharePoint in the top left here, this is when you click SharePoint, this is where it takes you. And so this is where I like to start out talking about navigation, because you're always going to have this SharePoint word there. You can always click on it to get to your start page. And here you can follow sites. You can see what sites you've been to recently. You can have featured links. This is really nothing new. You probably have been there. But one thing I would like to point out that we're going to talk about first is if you are allowed to create a site, so whether you're an admin or a user, if you click create site here, there's one limitation that I want to make sure everyone is aware of. And that is when you go into create a site, if you choose to create a team site, no matter what kind of site you choose to use, it's going to select either /teams or /site settings. And that is based on a SharePoint, or sorry, a setting in the SharePoint Admin Center, which is right here. So if you went to the SharePoint Admin Center and you go to settings and then site creation, this setting right here, it says create team sites under, but this is actually the, used to call it managed path, that it's going to use for any of the sites that you build, especially when you're coming from the SharePoint start page. Now, if you're creating a site from the SharePoint Admin Center and you're creating a communication site, you can choose there. But from the SharePoint start page, it uses whatever the setting is set to. And that's a little bit confusing to me. The wording is not quite correct. And so what happens also, if you create a team from Teams, but your setting is set to sites, it will create your SharePoint site related to that team under that site's managed path. So you always want to make sure that you have that setting set to whatever you want to use. In my company, we use Teams to create teams and team sites. And so we think of those as being related to an Office 365 group, any kind of site that is open to everyone, we use communication sites for. And creating hub sites, I actually want to go into SharePoint in just a minute and start doing some actual demo, not just do what we like to call death by PowerPoint. So hub sites, you must be a SharePoint administrator to, of course, get into the SharePoint Admin Center, or you can be a global admin. Your hub site can be created from a communication site or a team site. And you can create a maximum of 2,000 hub sites. Now, right now, you can create a hub site, but you can associate either communication sites or team sites to it. Microsoft at Ignite last year said that they are going to give us the ability to associate hub sites with other hub sites. So in a way, making nested hub sites. It hasn't been released yet, but it did come up in a session I was at, and they said it was going to be coming out. So let's go ahead and jump over to SharePoint. Close my Teams there. And I am going to go to my SharePoint Admin Center. Oops. Didn't realize I wasn't logged in. Okay. So SharePoint Admin Center. All right. So if I go to active sites, this is where I can create a site. And just to kind of show you what I was talking about. If I create a communication site, oh, that's right, it changed. If I create a it's anyway, let's get back to hub site. So I have a hub site here, and I have one called Cities, and this is my hub site right here. So we're going to go ahead and open that as well. Okay. And this is my hub site. If I click on, I swear everything was working yesterday. Okay, let me go to a site, one of the hub sites I already have. So I used to live in Atlanta. I just moved back to Texas 3 months ago. And I'm going to go to my Atlanta site. And none of my navigation is showing up. Okay, back to PowerPoint. This is why we have PowerPoint slides. Sorry about that. All right. So when you create a hub site, one of the benefits of a hub site is that any navigation that you have in your hub site will trickle down to the associated sites. So normally I would be seeing next to cities, I would be seeing all the different sites, and mine are just named after cities where I have spoken at different SharePoint Saturday and other events. So normally I would be able to click on these and go to that site, but no matter what site I go to, that when it's a hub site and it's an associated site, it inherits the navigation. And that means I don't have to go to every single site and manually set it up again or try to use PowerShell or PNP to set that up. So it saves you time and it makes things consistent, which the reason that I like to talk about consistent user experiences is that people tell me they hate SharePoint. And I always tell them that it's for, I guess, one of three things. First one would be that they've never had training on it. Second one is that they can't find anything because things are not tagged properly. They're not using metadata. And the third is that it's not consistent. So hub sites, to me, when this came out, you can say it's somewhat somewhat on the level of a site collection versus subsites, except that it's a way of tying together all subsites. I'm sorry, all site collections that you want to tie together. So this is great for an intranet too. You may have different departments such as human resources, information technology, communications, you may have an accounting or finance department. So different departments that you want everyone to be able to get to the sites for those departments. For example, I go to the human resources site when I need to look up the company holiday schedule. And this is just a fast way to get there from an intranet, from a hub site. All right. So I mentioned that hub site navigation is inherited, and therefore you don't have to set things up manually. If you are not using a hub site and you have a communication site, then you can create what's called a mega menu. And this I can definitely show you on a new site that I have. So over here, you can see I have a site called Coronavirus, testing some things here for my company. So the way that you create a mega menu is you go into this edit, and you may have just one or two things up here in your navigation, and you may have a lot. So here I have some tests. So I'm going to put in something new. I want to group together my lists here, these reports and songs. These are all column formatting tests that I've created, lists and libraries. So I'm actually going to go create a header called column formatting, and I want to put it right here. So I just click that little plus sign, and I'm going to drop down and make this a header, and then I'm just going to put in the name. Now when Mega Menu first got released, I thought, well, how do you set it up? And I looked for documentation and couldn't find any. So I did write a blog post on it. Okay. So I click OK, and now I have column header. It doesn't do anything because it's a header, not a URL. So now what I want to do is add another. I want to actually add another header. At this point, I could add a URL, but best practice and what Microsoft recommends is that you use the 3 levels. So I can have a header, a subheader, which you might think of as a category. And I am going to call this one lists. And then I want to make it a sublink, even though it's a header, not an actual link. And I'm going to make another one. And I am going to also make this a header, and I'm going to call this libraries. And this will just help me keep straight which ones were libraries and which ones are lists, because when I do testing and I'm creating a lot of new things, this is a good way to keep track of what I have done. But obviously in a real world situation, you may want to have different headers and categories. I like to create a hub site that is Microsoft 365 training. And then I create sites for SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, Power Platform. And then I'll put links to videos and documentation and blog posts in there so that when, and whether it's a new user or new hire or an long-term employee, if they have questions about how to use one of the Microsoft 365 products, then they can actually go to that help center, and it's self-service. They can at least get started there, and it sort of becomes a knowledge base, but it's links to resources rather than actually me creating or someone in my company creating documentation, although we could do that as well. So I've got my two categories here, and I am now going to add a URL. So I need to put in HTTPS, and it likes to add that. So you kind of have to go back and delete the entire HTTP that's there. And then my site is anything but code, because when I started doing SharePoint and created my own tenant, people would always ask me, well, I'd say I do SharePoint, and they'd say, well, what do you do? And I'm anything but code. And now here I am going to show you some JSON code today. All right, so this is my sites, coronavirus, and then I have lists, and I have reports. And I just want to call this reports. And I want to make that a sublink as well. If I wanted to move it up instead of moving it under, I can promote it, but I want to make it a sublink. And I'll just do one library. And again, with my and then this is, what did I call it? I'll just keep it short. So that's one thing also, is that you may want to keep these somewhat short. It's going to take up a lot of space if you make long names. So here you can see that I have lists as my subheader or category, and I have libraries, and that way I can help keep things straight. At my company, I have a mega menu set up, and then I've got a bunch of tips and things about working from home. So I was running out of room in my mega menu to go just straight across. So I created the headers with the categories, and that helps keep things legible. And it also, some people's screens are not as wide as mine, so you might want to keep that in the back of your mind as well. Okay. Do we have any questions so far? Is everyone muted, or do I need to be looking at chat? Okay. So let's go back so I can stay on track here. All right, so I just mentioned that I had some friends help me with some JSON. And so if you're not familiar with SharePoint patterns and practices, it is open source, so it's all run by the community. And I went out there and looked at column formatting, or column formatter, and that is where I got the idea that, hey, I could do some column formatting to make these links in my document library open in a new tab. So let's go back to SharePoint, and that was in my test docs. And if this is something that you've never looked at, then it's really actually pretty easy to do. And we're going to pull up the JSON here. And this is one of those things that I was having trouble with because like I said, I don't usually write code. I'm not a developer. So I actually went out to Twitter and used the hashtag SPHelp and got some help with getting this done correctly. And this is something else that I actually found this just on another column formatting sample. And this text-decoration none, that is actually, I'm going to add this in here and we're going to change what we're doing here. So I'm going to add this in. There we go. All right. And I need another. Okay. So I'm going to copy all of this. And what I did was in the name field, because this is by default, when you click on the name field in a document library, the file is going to open either in the client or in the web, depending on how you have the list settings in the, when you go into advanced settings, library settings and advanced, that's where you can tell it to open in the client or open in the browser. Well, what was happening was I could get the Word and PowerPoint and Excel files to open in the browser, but not PDF files. And I needed all types of files to open in the browser. So this is one of those things that, to me, having that difference between, it opens in a new tab, not just open in the browser, but open in a new tab versus opening in the same tab, that's not consistent. So again, we're talking about having a consistent experience here. So I'm using this JSON. So I'm going to click on the name column. I'm going to go to column settings and format this column. And then you can see I have some JSON in here already, which is actually what's making it look like hyperlinks. So I'm just going to replace what's there with what I copied. And when I hit save, it took out the underlines. So it no longer looks exactly like hyperlinks. Still blue, I could change that. So I could come in here under my style and I could actually add, and I like to do it over here where I can see everything on one line. So I could add font size. And I'm gonna make it 14 pixels. So I'm just gonna add that in. Actually, I just usually copy all of it just to make sure I don't mess anything up. And you can see that just made this a little bit bigger. It's a little more legible now, especially when you're looking at things on the screen. We don't want to have to squint. So I saved it. I can now exit out of that. And when I click on this Word file, it opens in a new tab. So I can go back and see that it did open in a new tab. And if I click on this PDF file, it also opened in a new tab. So again, that's just something small that you can do to provide a more consistent experience. And then again, you can use the JSON to control the font size, the color, you can make it bold. So any of that you want to do, and you can find all of that in the documentation on GitHub. Okay. I'm not used to such a quiet audience. I'm used to presenting in person. So let's go back to PowerPoint and we're just going to talk about these next two. So you can rename a site URL if you happen to misspell a word, or if you have a department that changes names. So I worked at a place where human resources changed to people development. So you can now actually go into the SharePoint Admin Center and correct the spelling. And it doesn't actually create a new site collection. It doesn't create a new site collection, copy it over. That's used to be the workaround, the way that you could do this. So what it does now is it creates a redirect. And you can, it'll have it, you can type in the correct spelling and it'll redirect, it'll show the correct spelling. So nobody will know that you misspelled it originally. And this is actually quite useful. My current company, once I create a site collection and start putting content in it, we have a retention policy that doesn't allow us to delete that site collection. So this was a good tool in case there are any mistakes or name changes. And then site swap, this came out last year, so you may or may not be familiar with it, but at the time I was a consultant and I had a client who had created their Office 365 tenant when the SharePoint homepage, the root site, was a classic site. And there was a lot of requests to Microsoft to be able to make the root site a communication site instead. So Microsoft did come up with a way to do it. It has to be done through PowerShell. This is the way, and these slides, by the way, are already on SlideShare. So I'll have a link to my SlideShare at the end. So you can go out and get copy all of these scripts and commandlets instead of having to type them yourself. Okay. So I just wanted to make everyone aware of that. And the other thing about when you do the site swap is the one that you are swapping to has to be a communication site. It cannot be a team site. All right, so I think we're doing well on time. That was the first half where we talked about navigation, and now we're going to talk about some branding. And actually, because of coronavirus, one thing that just came out was you can customize the Microsoft 365 navigation bar, and those customizations will actually follow through to the SharePoint mobile app. I wish I have a screenshot here on the right there. So if you have, if you want to go ahead and set up your colors, you do it here. Now, we're going to take a look next at site theme and site design. And those are PowerShell scripts that you can use to put in your own company colors. But that doesn't change the navigation bar up here. Okay, so where I have this teal, this is our dark teal for our SharePoint colors. Actually, this is our regular teal. So that's this, you have to actually go into the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. You go to Settings and then go to Custom Themes. And this has actually changed in the last couple of months because when I looked at it yesterday, I said, oh, that's a different, so I had to update my screenshots here. One thing is that when you upload an image, you can upload a JPEG and that will show fine on your SharePoint site, but it will not show on the SharePoint mobile app. So if you want to have your logo showing on the SharePoint mobile app, it has to be an SVG file. Okay. So that was just something about branding that was new as of this week, and wanted to make sure everybody had been made aware of that. And so here it just tells you about the logo having to be SVG for the mobile app. And then you can change the colors. And as you can see here, I have that light teal, or it's very bright here. So that is my accent color. And so that's why when I look at it on the mobile app, I'm like, that doesn't look as good as it does on the desktop in the places where I see it on the desktop. So that's something to take into consideration as well. So modern SharePoint site themes allow you to put in your company's colors, and you don't have to create a new master page. You don't have to create any HTML or JavaScript to do it. It's actually done through PowerShell and some JSON. And you can have 12 light colors, 6 dark colors, 16 supplementary themes. It's a lot. I actually have it on one of these slides that we're going to look at. There is a theme generator tool that you can use. I'm actually going to open this up. That's pretty cool. So you can come in here and click on colors, and then you see all the different products here. If you want to match colors to Power Apps or Teams, you can see they're very different colors. SharePoint actually needs to be updated, doesn't it? This is old. I will actually put that into, I'll put that on Twitter, get Microsoft to update that. All right, so it tells you what the primary color is. I think everything else has its new colors. Okay, so Teams, you can see the difference between the purples. So that's where you can get some colors from. I'll go back over here. And then this is the JSON for the site theme. So basically all you have to do is come in here and give it a name. So there's going to be a different file that we save that file. I called mine SharePoint theme because I'm using the SharePoint colors. And so whatever you name that file, you just put that name in here. Now this is the color palette. So this is where you put in all the different colors. You can see I have, this is a regular SharePoint teal color, and then the light and the dark. And then I'm using some other colors over here. Again, this is all in the slide, so you can actually copy all of this, and you don't have to try to find it on the documentation. You can if you want to, but all right. So to start out your changing this, you're going to go into PowerShell, and hopefully everyone is familiar with logging into PowerShell as connected to SPO SharePoint Online as an admin. And these are just our PowerShell commandlets, but in case you're not a PowerShell guru like I'm not, I wanted to walk through this and explain what each one of these means. So SharePoint theme, this is what we call our file that we had created, where we put, you'll see in a minute, the palette. This is my theme palette, so that is the that is a variable. And so I actually have various. I think I'll actually go back and add the full script to this. You have to get the JSON. So when you do that, you just have to pull from wherever you've saved it. I actually have mine saved on OneDrive, so it's a pretty kind of a long field here, and it tells you, has spaces and dashes, but as long as you put it in quotes here like this, then you can use those spaces and dashes, and you don't have to worry about grabbing that, having any problems with that. You want to make sure you do the /raw, and then I just called my script SharePoint site script. Now at this point, what's going to happen is this is going to run, and it's going to come back and give you a site script ID. And that is going to be unique each time. So you need to pause at this point and get that site script ID. Okay, and that is going to be for your site design. So basically the design is like a template. And then to continue on with our PowerShell, once we get our site script ID, I come in here, and this web template 68, that is a communication site. And this is my site script ID. Okay. So this is where you would put in that ID. So those are some of the things that you have to go through in order to get that done, and to use the site themes and the site designs, run them through PowerShell. And so let's actually go take a look at SharePoint. And once you have run the PowerShell, you can come over to change the look. And when you go to theme, that's right, this is a hub site. Here we go. So change the look. And I have a theme that is applied for the entire site collection. So the entire tenant. So anytime I create a new site collection, it will inherit the theme. However, you can create a theme and apply it just to a particular site collection. So I have my teal theme here. I've called them different things along the way. But you would just come in here and you would see the theme that you want to choose, that you want to use. So you can select it from there. You can make it the default theme and take away all the other options. And so then people can't even change the theme, because you may not want a department to change their colors to orange if your company's colors are blue and the competition's colors are orange, or you just don't want them changing it from your company colors no matter what. Let's go jump back. I'm going to show you this. The UI Fabric Theme Designer, this is pretty awesome. You can come out here and you can put in a color, and then this is where you can actually see what that color looks like. And then it'll have this accessibility checker. And so that's to make sure that people who are colorblind will be able to read it, or people who have any kind of vision impairment would be able to view it and not have things look the same. My headset beeped, so I'm going to hope that you can all still hear me. All right.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so this UI Fabric Theme Designer, again, this is quite a few things you can do with it. So when you set up your colors, you can see what they are going to look like. And to me, that's what they look like, and then also the accessibility checker are the main reasons that I like to use it. So SharePoint page templates, this is another way of having consistency. And so I am going to go out to SharePoint. We're actually going to be done a little early. There haven't been questions. So we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers here. All right, so when I go to, let me go back home. Okay. So this is my home page. If I go and create a new page, which I have been doing a lot of at work for our COVID-19 site. So we're going to call this SPS Warsaw. And I am just going to go ahead and I want to change this to plain. And I want to say, join me at, okay. And I'm just going to keep it simple. And I am going to, right here, let's just say I'm going to delete the text web part, and I'm going to add an image. I'm going to go out and I'm going to do a web search, and I'm going to search for Warsaw. And I'm just going to literally use the first picture that pops up because I'm not a geography expert. hopefully you all know that this is Warsaw. You can verify that.
Correct.
Okay.
Great picture.
It's beautiful, isn't it? I've actually been using that web search at work to choose all of the images that I've been using, and my marketing communications department love it. I was really worried about some of the things that I've had to choose. It's like, I work for a bank, so how do you choose a picture for drive-through banking? So it took a while, but I found a good one. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to make a copy of this page. Okay, and that is one thing that I can do. And then if I, when I give it a new name, let's say I'm gonna call this SPS Montreal. And I publish it. Well, now I have that picture of Warsaw, but I could easily go in and edit and then just change my image. So I don't know if you all have worked with this much, but here I'd want to just put in Montreal. So that was kind of easy. I already had a web part there. And then I can publish that. So now I have join me at SPS Montreal, and I could actually, if I was speaking there, I could go in and make a page about it. That's what I usually do. And all right, so if I go to site contents, I'm gonna go all the way down. So all these pages that I create, they're gonna be in site contents under site pages. And you can see that it, I put in SPS Montreal, it replaced my space with a dash. Okay, so this is a little trick if you want to know if something is a site or a page. Okay. You'll notice that when I go to home, I don't have multiple words, but if I had multiple words, it would take out the space. So if I put coronavirus disease, okay, let's just go create one since we have a couple of minutes here. Go back to the SharePoint Admin Center. And active sites and create. I'll create a communication site. A lot of times I like to start with blank. And so I'm going to call this, I'm going to put COVID-19, but I'm going to put a space in there. But you notice that it took out the space. So no more %20 here. Make myself the owner. Having trouble reaching the server. Oh boy, this will be fun. But you can see, I guess right here, this is what I wanted to point out, is that there's no space. There's no space and no dash. Okay. If we go back to my coronavirus site and back to site contents here, my site pages, there is a dash. So instead of just taking out the space, it put a dash. That is how I can tell whether I'm looking at like the home page for the site collection, or if I'm looking at a page within the site collection. Sometimes that can be kind of helpful. So if I don't see, if I see a dash, then I know I'm on a page, and hey, I can go click home and it's actually going to take me somewhere different than where I am. And possibly I just notice little things like that too much. All right. So also in my site pages, I can create a site page from here. I can click on this to open it back up. And, oh, I didn't want to create a new page, sorry. I'm going to edit this page. So we did a copy of a page. Now, if I want to make a template, I can come up here, and instead of save as draft, I can click on save as template. And I can give it a name, and I'm going to call this SPS template. And save page as template. And this page is a template. You can click there to learn more if you want. I'm going to go back to my site contents, refresh. And then here, it created a whole new folder for all my templates. So I can go in there and click on my template. And that's if I want to edit my template. I'm suddenly drawing a blank on creating a site from a template, create a new site. Okay, sorry. Gotta go home. Create a page. And there it is. So I can create, instead of using one of the built-in ones, I can create from my template and just create the page. And it's not much different than when I created a copy, except that I didn't have to already be in the page. I can just start from home, click on create a new page, and let's say this one, I will make this SPS Dallas. I live in Texas. And I live on the Fort Worth side. So I'm going to change this image, give y'all a good idea of Worth stockyards. This is one of the things that Fort Worth is famous for. They do the running of the, not running of the bulls, but they have bulls. I was hoping to find a picture with the bulls. There we go. So they do this like, well, they were during this, like it's like 3 times a week that you can go down to the stockyards and see the bulls. And then also, if you wanted to change your pictures, or crop it or resize it, you can actually do that now here in directly in SharePoint. I used to have to always bring my image into something like Snagit and change it. So this is somewhat recent that it came out. So you can crop it. I like to resize. This is the biggest thing for me, is being able to resize a picture. So just like anywhere else, I can grab that and make it smaller. If it was small, I could make it bigger. If you do make something bigger, just make sure that the quality allows for that. It doesn't get pixelated. And then I can publish my Fort Worth page. And there we go. So we have, I don't know if we're doing 50 minutes or a full hour, since I know the next session starts right on the hour. So that is what I had for you today. This is the first SharePoint Saturday Warsaw online, so please do go make sure you fill out the survey and let the hardworking event organizers know what you thought about it. And I hope you enjoyed the session. I just want to remind you that the in-person event is planned for September 12th. Hopefully everyone will be able to make it. I'm sad I won't be able to see you there, but hopefully maybe next year. And then here's my contact information. I'm on Twitter. I'm SharePoint Madam. That name was created during a SharePoint. Hopefully you're familiar with SharePoint. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, that is a great way to get in touch with me. I actually just recently went back to my maiden name, which is Lubelski. So on LinkedIn, it's still under Theresa Eller. On SlideShare, if you want a copy of these slides, you can just go to slideshare.net/SharePointMadam, and you will see these slides as well as everything else that I have posted over the years. And I've been doing this for 7 years. All right, so are there questions?
I don't see any questions. Thank you so much, Theresa, for your time, for your presentation. It was very, very interesting content, so thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a great weekend. Stay safe.
Likewise. Take care.
Bye.
Have a power nap right now.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.